I almost hit start streaming instead of start recording. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Nerd
I forgot my drink. I'll be right back.
Damn it, John. Where we discuss, dive into, or debate our favorite nerdy things, whether that's video games, movies, shows, technology. We'll have an AI talk at some point. But anyway, today we are back with some more MCU talk. My name is M9, and with me is professional streamer and role player John Arren. John.
Got my drink, it's fine.
I'm glad that you didn't hear my intro to you, because you would probably told me to fuck off. And also with us, we have somebody special today, is a renowned authority on Thor and professional ASMR YouTube artist, Solitary.
Yay! I'm slapping myself, by the way, because I cannot hold my push to talk button and clap at the same time.
Yeah, you just gotta slap your arm. Hi, Solitary. Welcome.
No, my face.
Your face.
Hello. Thanks for having me. What, me?
What was that?
Yay, Solitary, you! Thank you for joining us. Wonderful having you here.
We're excited to have Solitary.
Very excited.
Not
excited because her viewers on YouTube, but still excited.
Yeah.
Shut up.
That's what we're doing. We're partnering with Solitary to get ourselves more exposure. Smart.
Yeah, apparently if you want to make it on the internet, you need a female.
Why didn't we do
That
this
is not it.
Why didn't we do this from the beginning?
Right?
But we're not going to be talking about AOC, though, at all.
Good. I'm AOC'd out at the minute.
Yeah, I bet. So actually, the reason that we wanted to have Solitary on is because she's a big fan of Thor, and not just Thor in the movie, but the character overall, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, love that character.
And I mean, apart from some of the movies and a few of the comics, I wasn't super familiar with Thor as a character before the MCU, and obviously Thor in mythology is probably something completely different, no matter what the similarities might be. But that's kind of what I knew of Thor going in, the mythology part of it. How much were you exposed to Thor, the character, as other than what you knew of mythology Thor?
Well, I know nothing about mythology, so I'm just the only one I know is obviously the Marvel Thor.
Oh, okay, all right, so that's good.
I'm not
so
really
doesn't
into
believe in religions
stuff.
In general.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, it's so obviously when I was a kid, I used to watch all the cartoons, X-Men and stuff like that. And Thor was just this. It was weird. He'd make an appearance every now and again, and you knew he was a god, but he appeared very human-like, as in you'd see him, and I think once he was working for Greenpeace or something. It was random stuff that he turned up, but then when he needed to, then he would break out the god side, and then you're like, oh my god, yeah, that's what he is.
Yeah, and to me,
but it was just.
I always felt like Thor kind of seemed a bit silly when he appeared in cartoons or anything like that. And I'm not sure why. I don't know if it was just the ridiculous fur cloaks and stuff in comparison to some of the other superheroes. But it always kind of felt super random to see him.
Yes.
And he never really belonged, which is kind of okay, right? Because he doesn't really belong. That's his thing.
Yeah, that's what made it kind of special when he did turn up, because he was so out of place. And as I said, there was that time when they said he'd been working for Greenpeace, and I was like, well, this is what? Weird, but okay. But I think that is a good way to use a god, though, because if he's there all the time, then you're just going to keep turning to him. But if you can't find him because you don't know where he is and you can't get in touch with him, and he turns up when he wants to.
Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
I don't know Captain Marvel,
that's
so you can keep that one.
But I completely agree. And I think that the MCU did did right by that type of like entrance and the way that they use Thor. He did feel out of place when he first came in, but instead of making it feel awkward, they kind of leaned into it a bit more, and they played off of that. He's not human, and it is going to be kind of funny to see somebody try to interact with humans in a way that they never had before or anything like that. And that's actually one of my favorite things about this movie.
I have to agree. This was definitely my favorite part of this movie. The fact how he played. The actor is amazing, and he played being out of place so well. And the fact that Natalie Portman like crashed into him like several times, that was hilarious. I thought this was like a great superhero movie that introduced him really well into the Marvel universe. I enjoyed the fact that he was sent here to be punished by Odin. Odin, of course, was also played really well by Hannibal Lecter. And I enjoyed Padme Amidala. I enjoyed Chris Hemsworth, and I definitely can see how this is Solitary's favorite character in the MCU.
I love that
Yeah.
John picks and chooses whether to call them their real names or just random
their character
characters
name.
that they play.
Yeah. Hannibal Lecter. It's Anthony Hopkins, man. He's like a
Right?
really well celebrated actor.
And then
Hannibal Lecter.
Padme instead of Natalie.
Because
I
she's
don't even
been
do it on
acting
purpose.
since
It
she was a
just-
child. Like she's been around forever. And like, oh yeah, Padme.
I enjoyed her in Black Swan, but not as much as Padme Amidala.
Okay.
I mean, that's true, but Natalie Portman's so great. If you haven't seen the movie, I think it's called never mind.
Black Swan.
No, it's like a horror sci-fi one.
V for Vendetta. She was
No.
great in
Oh,
that.
she
That
was
my
great
favorite
in that,
movie
but-
with her.
Yeah.
She was
Um,
bald. It was cool.
Anyway, one of my favorite things about Chris Hemsworth is his ability to do comedy, and I think
Oh yeah.
that Marvel. I mean, we'll talk about like the later Thor movies also, but in this one, Marvel really knew how to balance that humor very well with Chris Hemsworth and still making it that it didn't feel ridiculous. It was just kind of a humorous situation that for somebody looking in, right? But it wasn't exactly mocking him or making him feel like a ridiculous character. And I think Chris Hemsworth did such a great job with this role. And like to me, it was one of my favorite. After seeing it, I think one as far as origin and as far as like introducing us to a character, it's probably still one of my favorites.
Yeah, despite the fact that he was stripped of his powers and he was essentially punished and kind of powerless and emotionally vulnerable and confused, he still came across as very strong. And he, most importantly, came across as someone who is able to learn and evolve. And over the course of the next movies, we will see that evolution. I would say even more than with someone like Iron Man. I think Thor is definitely one of those characters that learned or kind of evolved the most in this franchise.
Mm. For the first one, like Eminem was saying, I don't think he got credit for his like comedic timing in it, and it never felt too stupid. Because I'm not a fan of like really stupid. I mean, Step Brothers is one of my favorite films. I'm going to put that to the side. But normally, I don't like it when it's just too absurd. But
Yeah,
it's because he is a god on Earth and things are going to be weird to him, so technically like an alien. But the way he did it, it was never too much. It felt like that for me. It never went too far. It just had this nice kind of level to it where I was just like, yes, it's enjoyable. I'm not cringing. I'm not annoyed with them. It's just, yeah, it's enjoyable. And I miss that from some of the other films because I feel like,
Yeah, same.
yeah, some of the other ones, they try to take it too far, or some
Yeah.
things are just played totally for laughs, but they don't fit. Whereas all the things that happened to him fit because they built on it so well.
Yeah, as M9 said, you needed balance, and some of the movies kind of went a bit too far, either with the serious stuff or with the comedy stuff. This movie is really well balanced.
Yeah, and I don't mind. I don't mind when you go a bit darker for the sake of story if it's tonally consistent. But
Yeah.
I always felt like with Thor later on, like after this movie, and we'll have those episodes where we talk about other movies, but they do struggle with that, whether we want to push him to a darker side because he does go through a lot of shit, or
Yeah.
or do we stay over on the lighter side and make those type of jokes, and it doesn't feel as balanced as, for example, this movie does. And I think that they regain it a bit later on when it comes to like Thor Ragnarok, but um they do struggle with the Thor series, I should say. And unfortunately, I personally feel the Thor, I'm not going to say franchise because the MCU is a franchise, but the Thor series is the weakest for me in the MCU.
Oh,
It started off
interesting.
so strong, and I totally agree because it did start off. This was a good one. It wasn't too big. It just felt just right. And then uh, after that, it didn't regain. I don't think it kept what the original one had that made it fun for me.
Hmm.
So it's fair to say that for both of you, this is your favorite Thor movie.
I think Ragnarok takes it, but it was weird because um I had already been so like disappointed with some of the other Thor movies, that so like
Mm.
Ragnarok was kind of a like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, it
And
was. It was like it was refreshing from
mhm,
what we'd had. So it was kind of, I think it's viewed more fondly because of what came before.
yeah, and I think, see, like I always I don't know if you guys have seen Cabin in the Woods. It's
Oh,
actually
yeah,
one of my favorite
amazing.
movies, and
So
the
scary.
it is, and it's so creative as far as like a horror movie. But Chris Hemsworth is so good in that because of his
Yeah.
like comedic timing and things like that. And when you have a movie like that, you can tell that they were trying to play with his ability to do comedy. And there are times that it did get a bit ridiculous, unfortunately. But overall, I think the Thor character provides so much for the MCU. And when we get into like talking about Thor and Loki, it's some of the best storytelling there is as like siblings. Um and I that's another point towards this movie and the series is I love the Thor and Loki dynamic. I love Loki as a character and what Tom Hiddleston does, but they go through a lot of back and forth, and I think it's super entertaining.
I have to say, I very much enjoy more than just Thor and Loki. I enjoy the entire family. I love Odin. I love Frigga, their mother, and like even the side characters, the sidekicks, the heroes around are
Oh yeah,
kind of interesting to watch. The one that constantly stuffs his face, do not
Yeah.
misinterpret my appetite for my sorrow. Whatever he said, that was, I thought, very cool line.
it felt like a D
Yeah.
and D party.
Kind of.
I like how the sibling rivalry was strong from the start. You could see when like Thor was talking to his dad about stuff and Loki's at the side giving him the side eye. Like he's so done with his shit. He just doesn't just waits for him, like he's waiting for him to slip up.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then to his face, he's kind of like, "Oh, brother, you can do this." And I'm like, "You sneaky little git! I saw what you did. Like, it's there
Loki,
from the start."
yeah, Loki was such a wild roller coaster. Not even just through this movie, but through the MCU as a
No.
whole. The Because there are times that there is like a deep connection, and he's not lying. Like Loki loves Thor, but Loki loves himself more.
He cannot help who he is,
He
right?
can't,
He's
yeah,
literally
he
the
can't.
god of mischief, and he's doing what he's supposed to, or at
And
least one would think.
they do such a good job at pulling you in close just so that you can feel betrayed as well by Loki,
Yeah.
because you are betrayed several times by him throughout the franchise. But he does so good. And I was telling John not long ago that Tom Hiddleston actually went to audition for Thor, and he got Loki
Yeah.
instead. He never even auditioned for Loki.
Yeah, he's not. He's a great actor. Don't get us wrong, but when I think Thor, I don't think they could have made him into a believable one. He would have been a good actor in whatever part they give him, but I don't think he could have been Thor.
Yeah,
No.
Salter would have been better Thor than Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah, more believable.
But isn't it
Bigger balls
funny
too.
how like natural or like how good he was at that role and so believable and just pulled off that mischievous and that treacherous type of behavior, and he wasn't even going for that role initially. One thing that
Yeah.
that John and I talk about consistently is the casting in the MCU movies, how they're always so spot on. Like the casting directors just know exactly what they're looking for, and they they don't seem like they give up until they find that.
Yeah, you can. It's so important, and they did a good job. Obviously, with Thor, with Iron Man, with Loki, with even with the Incredible Hulk. Like, that guy does a good job as being the Hulk, and
Debatable.
I quite liked Mark Ruffalo in this. I've seen
Me
him in
too.
other things, romantic comedies and whatnot, and he's good in that. But I still, at first, I wasn't sold on him. But then when I watched a full thing with him in, I was like, oh, actually, yeah, no, I can see this being the Hulk.
Yeah. So let's talk about the one thing that we like to bring up often is the romantic interest or the quote unquote love story in some of these movies, because I think that a romantic interest can ruin a movie pretty quickly
Yes.
when it feels forced or when it doesn't feel like it belongs. And one of the things that we've managed to talk about in almost all of these things is how Marvel handles them pretty well, as in putting the romantic interest kind of in the back seat of a story. They don't focus on it too much. I think this one maybe they lean on it a bit more than others, but it never feels forced. It just kind of feels like it's just happening, and I respect that about this movie. How do you feel about it?
I was when I was watching it, I was thinking, this is a bit. It felt a little bit shoehorned in places, but from like a straight female's perspective, he was a funny bloke. He was kind. He was all these kinds of things. So I could understand why Jane would be interested, and it was needed for his story because obviously he was going to care about the people there anyway. But she was like an anchor to make him care a bit more. And to get his side, across, so he can tell more about himself. So he needed somebody there for that. And he did have obviously friendships with the Skarsgård man, and that told you stuff about his character too. But I do feel like it was believable, a little shoehorned at times, but it was believable and not too much.
Yeah, I think this one felt convenient, but but in a believable convenience, as in if you were an alien or a god or something, that you came to Earth and you happened to like run into one of your first women and they just happened to be quirky and adorable and stuff like that, like a crush would be believable, right? You've never met someone like this, and curiosity leads to interest, and interest leads to more, so it does seem believable in a very convenient type of way. What about you, John?
Exactly.
I definitely bought in. I thought it was sweet, organic, and kind of wholesome. And more than that, I thought it was like a nice commentary on the whole kind of motive of this movie, the mythology versus science. Thor was the mythology, Jane was the scientist, the astrophysicist. And I kind of liked the various kind of opposing perspectives that kind of met in the middle, and Thor was just like, oh, your science, yes, you are trying to basically describe my everyday reality, that I just kind of swing my hammer, Heimdall, opens the Bifrost, and it creates this little wormhole that is like the Einstein-Rosenberg bridge, I believe it's called, something like that. Yeah, very cool. Open the Bifrost.
I I'm so glad that you brought that up, John, because the science versus what is essentially magic or mystical or whatever, they did such a good job with that. And it's not the first time that we see it, right? Like with Doctor Strange, we see that type of cross as well, where like where he has to kind of change his mentality to go from scientific to mystical. And
Yeah, it's an interesting mixture, isn't it? Like Norse
It is.
mythology, kind of like gray, filthy, just old-timey Vikings, and suddenly they're this high-tech alien society with spaceships, railguns, laser swords, and I don't even know what else.
yeah, and I think he makes a comment on that, if I'm not mistaken. He's like, where I'm from, it's the same or something like that.
hmm
And it's I absolutely love it. I love that mix.
It is very interesting and a bit unusual, but I think it works. In the grand scheme of this franchise, it's kind of necessary. You cannot just have like these old-timey gods kind of like living, near Yggdrasil and just kind of floating about in ether. You need them to be kind of grounded, in this universe that is filled with like spacefaring civilizations and bigger threats, than the gods are, which is a bit jarring in places, that there are puny gods that certain green men can just throw around like rag dolls, but it is what it is. You kind of have
Yeah,
to
I know what you mean
embrace
there.
that as a part of the universe.
It wasn't. I didn't like when that happened. I'm like, absolutely not. But that's not this film, so I'll leave
I've
that
already
there.
learned not to question this. As long as your name is in the title of the movie you're watching, you can pretty much be sure that that character will be the strongest in that particular movie. But as long as your name is not in the title, then you will pretty much lose every fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I don't like that Marvel does that,
hmm
because obviously there is a scale. There's always going to be a scale, and there's nothing wrong with having Thor being like as powerful as he is against all of them. He doesn't need to be there all the time. And if you know that there's a character that can't go up against him, do it in a more believable way. Like, Hulk could have done something different. He doesn't have to like throw people around, or like Loki's a god. You know what I mean? It's just there's a skill, and it's okay to have that skill.
It's basically like Conan RP, right? Everyone is the strongest, which
Well,
means no one is.
yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah.
the thing, and it's you should let it be that. Let it be that a god is a god, and then a radioactive man is a radioactive man.
A shield throwing guy, is just throwing his frisbee around.
Yeah, he's just throwing a bit of metal. Like, yeah, like Thor's got a bit of metal as well. That's not. Don't even. You wouldn't. Know your
Yeah,
place, basically.
But it's a special kind of metal that only he himself can, of course, handle,
Right.
because he's the chosen one. No one else in the franchise would ever have the ability to pick it up, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Cough, cough. But you know what? I think it's such a hard thing to accomplish, though, when you really think about it, right? It's like when we do role playing or anything like that, like balance is such a big deal for whatever class system you're trying to create,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes it's kind of impossible to make it just. When you start playing with the idea of gods and and elementals and celestials and geniuses and all this stuff, it's how do you make it fair, right? Because at what point does magic and mystical overpower technology? Because it should be very easy for that, right? And I think when you have somebody like Iron Man that's solely based on technology, and then you
Mhm.
have later on some of the things that they'll blend the Infinity Stones with technology or with whatever. It's like it's hard to balance for storytelling. And I
Yeah.
do think that they get a little lazy with it sometimes. It's like, Thor's depressed. He's not here. He's fucking at home in his bedroom. Like, it's like, what do you mean? The world is like, we're facing all these people, and Thor's playing video games. Anyway,
Do you guys think, as someone who is very knowledgeable about this franchise and as like big fans, do you think that the MCU did it on purpose? That they basically made it so that every character has at least like one movie where they are the strongest Avenger or the strongest
Oh, yeah.
hero, so that like all the fans can be like, yeah, but my favorite character was strong in this one, which means that he has an argument, to be the strongest.
That and
Yeah.
because they want that to be, obviously, as you said, if the name's in the title, they want them to be the main focus or the strongest one of that. But I don't think you have to. You don't have to. Not everybody has to be as strong. They've
you
all
prefer
got
the
different
consistency.
strengths.
See,
Yeah, that's it.
yeah.
That's what I want.
See, like, this is exactly why I like and we've talked about this before, John, the, like, more grounded street level storytelling, right? Because
Yeah.
there's no way that you'll be able to tell me that that Thor is fighting the same type of villain that Ant-Man is fighting. Like, I'm sorry, no. You know, and it's okay to scale back and
Yes.
and get a bit more grounded. And that's kind of why I appreciate that, you know, the Ant-Man movies, which we'll talk about, are like a heist movie. It's not necessarily end of the world movie. And while some of the other characters are, they try their best to make it more of a localized problem, even though there is that need for suspension of disbelief, you know, because you would think is like, where are the rest of the Avengers during this? Like, what the hell?
That's one of the problems I found with the franchise because the Avengers happened too often. In the cartoons when I was a kid, like, yes, we had the X-Men and some people joined them sometimes, but it was very scarce when sparse when it did happen. It wasn't as often as it is.
Mhm.
So you could settle and you would just know, like, Thor was off doing his own thing. Like, you can't just contact him whenever you want because it was kind of distant. Like, yes, he cared about the Earth and he had his priorities. It wasn't constantly saving the Earth. When you seen him, it was like few and far between. And when, like, the Avengers get together, I feel like it happens too often. So now it's just like, well, where's everybody else? Like you said, where are they? Like, why isn't Iron Man here killing people with his big suit when, like, Ant-Man's trying to do stuff? Like, why aren't it just become too normal, I think? And obviously with the first Thor film, it wasn't yet. So it was like, you know, we could just enjoy him as a character by himself. It wasn't kind of where's everybody else.
Right.
It was like, oh yeah, we can watch this.
But it's kind of where these type of movies and the fandom itself is to blame a little bit, because when you
Yeah.
like, you always have to go bigger and better when it's movies like this, or else you're not breaking any new ground and
Mhm.
fans will just get bored. So it's almost like there's failing successfully or like it's they're doing such a good job that they're kind of making it harder for themselves, and with every single movie. But you know, I think that they do decent enough.
I've definitely noticed as I progress throughout the MCU universe that the writers or whoever is behind the scenes kind of ruling over, you know, the timeline and the stories and the overall mythos, they're definitely writing themselves into corners and then inventing like these
Mhm.
deus ex machinas to save them, to expand the universe even further, you know, to stretch. You know, it's not just this thing that can destroy our world, the Earth. There is now another thing that can destroy all the other Earths or all the other universes or the time itself. And at some point you're just like, okay, maybe it's time to stop beating this horse and like let it rest, you know. Just
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you said, they had to keep getting bigger, I suppose, to keep people interested. Not all of them started off that grounded, so it did have to be bigger and bigger. But then after a while, like you said, it just gets a bit meh.
it's a money-making business, so I understand why they're doing it. Of course, we all do, you know. And it's not like we are not getting anything out of it. You know, we are still getting like decent movies. But watching these older MC universe, I can only imagine must feel for you guys kind of nostalgic, right? It's like when things were not as complicated, when things were kind of, you know, just kind of grounded, earthly, and fun, you know, and
Yeah, because there was
stakes weren't as high.
there's something to be said about the entirety of the MCU and what they were able to accomplish over the course of 20 years, right? With one big story, and which is, you know, a filmmaking success when you think about it. But going back or watching some of the other movies early in the MCU is a bit special, because you can tell that they're connected in one way or another. but they're very personal and intimate.
Hmm.
And they're not as concerned with pushing an overall narrative. And where that becomes a problem later on is like almost all of the movies have to serve a purpose to the greater story. And
Yeah.
that's when it starts getting like, okay, this is a bit much.
Yeah, there's always got to be something tying in. It's like with my favorite TV shows, things like Buffy and Supernatural and stuff, Monster of the Week's always my favorite, not
Yeah.
when there's an overarching storyline that has to last a full season, because I'm bored of it. I don't care. Like, you're going to tell me, like, it's just, it ends up when it goes on for too long with TV shows, say they get 8, 9 seasons or whatever. I understand they run out of Monster of the Week, so they have to do something bigger, but then they've got to try and keep it all connected. Whereas with the films, I would like them to just be their own thing and then obviously have a meetup. I don't think the Avengers should have happened so soon. I know it isn't soon in terms of years, but in terms of character building, I feel like they could have took the time to do smaller things with them before going on to that.
Yeah, I think John and I talked about the Black Widow movie, how it came 15 years later instead of like it should have been pre-Adventures, I feel.
Definitely.
We should have probably we got a Hawkeye series, right, which was based later on, but I feel like a Hawkeye kind of spy thing. You could have done a Hawkeye Black Widow type of thing. They talk about like the Budapest thing all the time, right? Like a spy thriller type of thing with Black Eye and
Black Eye.
with I was gonna say Black
I was going to
Widow.
let that go. I was like, this is fun.
No, I'm not letting this go.
It's a couple name, like Black Eye.
Yep.
The with both of them, I think would have worked a lot better because perhaps a movie with Hawkeye by himself would have been a little boring unless
Did anyone watch it?
If it had have been earlier on, when the films were still grounded,
Yeah,
I think they could have got away with
people
it.
watch
Yeah.
the
You guys
series.
like Hawkeye, aka Black Eye?
I
yeah,
do from what
like
I've
him.
seen of him, yeah.
I understand why he's there. He's there as the human representative. Like the one who is kind of vulnerable, but still, very skillful, who can make a difference. But I don't know why. If it's the actor or just the character that he just has a bow and shoots it. And I get it. He's like a secret spy, similar to like Black Widow and stuff. But like, I never enjoyed him in any scene.
And that's
Maybe
why
like
I
later
say,
a bit. Yeah.
and that's why I say if it was a movie between them, like a mission that they went on together, I think would be
And that's
better.
how they're like bonded, yeah.
Right, yeah, because perhaps they didn't have enough at that point to carry their own movie. I think Hawkeye, when he did the last Ronin stuff later on, that probably could lend itself to like its own movie. But as he was originally, maybe not. I do think that it could have been better for us to get more time with characters like what Solitary was saying. But I mean, Avengers still worked for me really well. Like I absolutely love the first Avengers movie.
I did, and I really did like it. But after that, they had to go bigger for the next one, and then for the
Correct.
next one, and then it was like, oh, there's like now you've just you've shown us everything. So what are you doing next time?
Yeah.
Like you've revealed everything too soon, if you ask me.
So for this Thor movie, how do you feel? And you can go back to make your point, John. But like, how do you feel about the villain?
I'm sorry, I cannot let this joke go. So Solitary, you could say that Avengers was the OnlyFans moment of the MCU.
Yeah.
That's all. Thank you. I wanted to get it out of my system. I'm happy now. How did I feel about the villain? Villain. What was the villain in this? Oh yeah, the giant, big, freaking robot that was shooting laser out of his mouth. I hated it. am one of those who actually don't really enjoy this combination of magic and high tech, and this was one of the things that I didn't really like. I would have much more preferred like a dragon, or just some kind of mythological guardian of the world and stuff.
I don't really think he was the villain, though, John.
Well, to me, he was one of the villains.
Yeah.
Loki was the villain.
Loki was.
I know you guys like Loki, but to me, Loki, even in this movie, he's to me like a petulant child.
He's a whingy little
trying to
bitch
make
is
a
what he is.
scene. And yes, he is occasionally resourceful, but especially like over the course of the franchise, he strikes me more as a character that is just kind of there to randomly get lucky and randomly be very incompetent. And
Yeah.
I feel like
He's a punching bag.
Yeah, and I don't really like this from a god of mischief, from a god of chaos, that so many people are like, yeah, I'm like Loki, look at me, I'm chaotic, aren't I great? I feel like he should have been portrayed as more of a trickster in like a clever way, perhaps
Absolutely.
not exactly losing like every fight, not exactly immediately betraying everyone because it makes no sense for his survival. I wanted a bit more survival, a bit more smart, a bit more like long-term vision for his plans. I know I'm kind of jumping into the future movies, but even in this one, I didn't really see him as like a villain.
Yeah.
There were definitely cool moments that I enjoyed. He's a great actor, no doubt about that. But to me, this movie was more about Thor and his evolution. And I genuinely thought that the big robot shooting the laser was more of a bad guy. Or whenever the Agent Coulson stole the research of Jane and stuff. And can we talk about the sidekicks of Jane? I enjoy the old guy, the doctor, and the freaking poli-science major who suddenly, for no reason, decided to go like on an adventure with a freaking astrophysicist, which makes no sense. But I was kind of
He's
into
getting
it because,
college credit.
Yeah,
yeah,
Darcy.
but when you're
Yeah.
a PhD student, or you have enough credits, you can just go take an art class. You don't have to travel across the world.
Yeah, but extracurricular activities looks good on the resume. Um, the
Yeah,
Good
plan
point.
ahead.
So actually, I'm going to make a counter argument when it comes to Loki.
Do
I
it.
I completely agree when I say that when you say that he should have been more mischievous and maybe more well thought out. But I think what is strong about Loki in the MCU is the fact that he is one of the few characters that will dive into something unafraid of losing. He
Mhm.
he is not he's never afraid of taking chances, never afraid of losing. And even though he is the kind of a punching bag for Thor, and his story is much better because he's constantly losing. And as you get into like the Loki series later on, it
He is set up as someone whose goal is to make the other characters look better, or to make them stand out.
yes and no. Like his comeback story, I should say, or like how it all wraps up, makes it so much more beautiful with the fact that he was constantly getting kicked down and coming and getting back up than like if he was successful the whole time.
That is true, but it's just so very far from the portrayal, the Norse mythology, and that's kind of the only thing that's rubbing me a little bit the wrong way. But I understand, like what his purpose is in this franchise, and he plays his part well. It just kind of becomes a bit boring to me, like over the course of other movies, like how much he's kind of a meme, in certain situations.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, he's gonna betray them again, yay! Everyone knows he's gonna do it, but oh, he did it anyway. Oh, yay, it's fun.
Yeah, I agree.
I can totally get that. For me, with him in the film, he was he was a bit of a whinge. Poor me. Thor's, he's the favorite one. When he wasn't, there's a lot of things. It's just it's his perception. It's what he's seeing and how he's feeling. And he's a selfish little git, so he's not really
Yeah.
bothered about how the other people feel. And there is sibling rivalry there, even though it's not there with Thor, because he's just a brother. Like, he just sees him as his brother. Whereas Loki's just plotting and scheming behind his back for all these transgressions that he thinks are happening to him, and they're not. But with the film, I don't know, there was so much I think they could have showed more, but they didn't have the time. It wasn't one of these 3-hour films. They wanted to show obviously his motivations a bit, and he did come off as like a moody teenager, like, well, poor me. Like, did you God shut up? Like, you could be king one day. What are you doing, man?
This was clearly Thor's movie, not Loki's movie. And it was quite obvious. And, he played his part well. But if Loki's ultimate goal was to be the king of Asgard and to have his revenge, then I feel like he could have done better than how he did in this movie.
Yeah.
But he could have just done better as a person if that's what he wanted.
Yeah,
Instead of being like a little scheming git, he could have just got stuck in there and actually made a difference.
Thor made it very easy for him to get everything Loki ever wanted.
Yeah, the funny thing is that I kind of feel like Loki never really wanted it. I think Loki was desperate in some of the things that he did, or just did it as like as a result of. But I feel like none of the things that he was doing, or the things that were happening as far as like him trying to ascend to the throne, was something that he was trying to get, like by fully planning it out. I think we see Loki, right, because we were betrayed as an audience or whatever. We see Loki as a villain, but Loki's not the villain of his story. In a lot of
him, he's not.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, Loki is like the victim, and he's just being reactive. And so like to think is like, oh, I would have liked him to be more villainous. For him, he's not a villain. So he's just
he was betrayed.
Things. Yeah,
so he felt like that. And we also have to be fair to him and his character. Thor was kind of a moron in this movie in a way, too. And he also had to learn the hard way. And I feel like Loki too. Loki also had to evolve and learn a few lessons before we get to see like the final version of Loki.
Yeah, it's like being in the shadow of your brother that's like kind of an idiot, but you can't do anything about it because he's the heir to the throne. It's like,
and he has a hammer.
Yeah, but so is he though. He could have still got it. He's that sibling that thinks that the other one's the favorite, that everything they do, that they fought rainbows, and you just can't even do the right thing by just breathing. When you can look at them and go, well, that's not the case, but to them it's real.
Yeah, I just feel like
to him it is absolutely real.
I feel like Odin wouldn't have ever allowed Loki to sit on the throne.
I don't know.
That would be a cool alternate reality to visit.
Well, there are many multiverses from what I understand, so I'm sure there is one where Loki, is the ruler. But like, this is all kind of Odin's fault, isn't it?
Yeah.
Although he is good at teaching his kids the right lessons, I feel like there were other ways to teach them, perhaps a bit less destructive and hostile and like emotionally debilitating, but still
absolutely
effective.
Yeah, he was a bit of an emotional
abusive father.
Abusive,
yes.
Yeah,
emotionally. That's what I thought when I was watching it. It's to start off, I'm like, dude, you didn't have to do that. What did you just sent him to another planet to learn a lesson? Like, could you not talk to him?
I kind of like it, because this is the Viking background, that I wanted. Yeah. This is the kind of gruesome, naturalistic way of how things were done, in the past. The callback, to the mythos, to the legends. If a Viking is misbehaving, you freaking exile them to England.
Exile them, yeah. I love it. I love that. It is to us, right? It's like a culture shock type of thing. Like Jesus, it's not that serious, Dad.
like it's just another planet, man. You haven't just told them to go in the fire.
Didn't kill anyone,
Yeah, but I like in things like this, and like for example, not to talk about Game of Thrones in this episode, but like you can get exiled to, you can get like pretty much given to another kingdom as a child. Yeah. It's like, what the fuck, like.
Well, that's like political stuff as well, though, with Game of Thrones. So, like, they're playing the long con, so.
But it's interesting to have those moments where it's completely disconnected and emotionally from what we know. It's like, Dad, I messed up a little bit, but can you just like punish me to my room for like a day or two? No.
Yeah, it made it hard for me to believe that he actually loved them, whereas On some level, I do. I believe I love both of them. Yeah, he might have
Mm-hmm.
took Loki for a different reason to start off with, but then he did actually become his son, and I think that's how he saw him. But then I'm supposed to believe you love your children, where you just stripped him of his powers and sent him like I don't know, just it. Like he can't do anything for himself. You send him to a different planet. He doesn't know anything about it, and you took his powers away. Do you want him to get hit by a car and die? What are
Yeah.
you doing?
Yeah, Odin.
I think we're all forgetting a
not
very
Father of the Year.
important fact.
Yeah, no.
I think we're all forgetting a very important fact that Hannibal Lecter is, the All-Father. He sees all, so he's kind of cheating.
That is
he
true.
knows how things are gonna turn out, how things are gonna develop, and it's one of the common tropes in the MCU that you often encounter characters that kind of see all. Like the Ancient One in Doctor Strange, and there will be others who. This whole
Are ahead,
franchise.
yeah.
Definitely juggles the concept of destiny, the fatalism, quite a bit, and sometimes I feel like they want to have a cake and eat it too. They want to inspire the heroes in believing that they can change their fate. If they try hard enough. But then it doesn't matter because the time has already decided how things are going to turn out. And even if there is like a literal rupture in the timeline, people are just going to come by and they're going to fix it. But then you have like all these universes, where everything is possible. So it's like, well, I'm freaking lost.
But it felt more in character for the Ancient One. Like, she's not Doctor Strange's mom. She doesn't have to look after him. Like,
That is why I
know what I
enjoy
mean?
Doctor Strange more than this movie, even though I think this movie is really good and I did enjoy watching it. But like on the philosophical level, it's not bad. But I did enjoy Doctor Strange more.
yeah, that made sense for that. This is a bloke's dad. Like, if my dad did that to me, I'd never speak to him again.
Yeah, let's
But,
not even
like,
talk about the
obviously-
other sibling. That comes later on. But it's like, Jesus,
yeah.
Odin, you are not winning any of the Dad of the Year awards.
Yeah,
He's not the
somebody-
father of the year, and he's not even the person of the year, as we will learn, in the third movie. He was
Like,
kind
someone
of a
should have
prick.
given that man a vasectomy, but like they didn't, and here we are.
Frigga, on the other hand, she is amazing and she can do no wrong, and I absolutely adore her.
There
Oh,
wasn't
for
a
sure.
lot of her in this film, though. So
But
just
there will
going
be
off
in the
this
second
film
one, and she's the
purely.
best character in this one.
In
by
the
proxy.
second one,
Yeah,
calm
I
your
love her.
pants. There wasn't. I got the feeling that she was supposed to be a strong character in the first one because she would have to be to put up with like Odin.
Mhm.
But it was not like that's my son.
She's
You're
the
not doing
solitary
that.
of this
It was-
story. She is the background character that is strong in her own way, but she doesn't have to like show it. She proves it by simply being there and by acting, in the shadows and only speaking when it's important for the scene.
What I want to
No,
know
no.
is the RRP that happened between Odin and this lady. How did you guys get together? Because if I would have met Odin at the club, I'd be like, that's a red flag, dude.
Oh, massively, yeah.
You're a walking red flag.
Yeah, and that's before you even know about his parenting. You just know, like, I don't know. I'd be like, there's something about this bloke. I'm gonna decline that drink. I'll see you later. I'm off to somewhere else. I'm
Yeah,
not
swipe
I'm not
left.
getting involved with you
Swipe
two.
left on
Better
Odin.
than Zeus.
Well, yes, better than Zeus,
Yeah.
but
Just saying, better than Zeus.
Yeah, but
But
like
she-
how much
yeah.
better?
I feel like she was probably one of them ones that in public she puts up with his shit, but behind closed doors she's like beating him or something.
Yeah, she's
Like,
like,
don't
throwing
you ever
pots at
talk
him.
to me like that in public again? Like, how dare you? There's like plant pots going at his head. There's shoes flying, and I feel like that's why she's like a strong front with him
Yeah.
in
I
public.
think-
She's like, I'll
I
make you lose
like-
the other eye. You better get the hell out of my
Yeah.
face.
Do that again, will you?
I like their dynamic because to me, Odin is like the universally wise, king, the character. Like he sees the bigger picture, but he
Right.
forgets, he's kind of blind to what's close to him, And
Exactly.
he definitely does mistakes and then falls asleep, because he's an old man and needs a nap and he cannot deal like with all this emotional baggage. But she can. She is the wise one. She is the nurturing mother, that is there to kind of support him in this lack of what he's supposed to have, as a father, as a king. And that's why I like their relationship. Even though, of course, in this movie she did fuck all, but to me she's kind of still there, And I love her relationship with Loki. That is my favorite side of Loki, how much he cares about her, even though she is not his mother,
Yeah, and
I mean,
how he kind
technically-
of took over. like he kind of took after her too with like the witches side and stuff like that. I think it's really cool for storytelling. But I completely agree with the relationship and dynamic between the king and queen. The fact that he's so busy with the overall picture that everything in front of his face kind of goes over his head, and she's, you know, the more closer with the children,
Practical.
yeah, the practical parent. And I think that that's kind of awesome for storytelling, and it worked pretty well.
Yeah, she's there to keep him grounded. She's like the
Piper from Charmed.
Piper's a crap character.
You take
No.
that back.
The what?
Never. Piper
Piper
from Charmed.
Oh, Piper's the best.
She's definitely not Piper from Charmed, but yeah, I think like she's the thing that keeps him anchored. Otherwise, he would probably just never pay attention to anything that's in front of him. Like M9 said, he's consumed with all the other stuff, and then it would just be like something's happening inside his family, and he's not going to know.
Yeah. So, John, where does this fit into your ranking?
As I've already alluded, I do prefer Doctor Strange over this movie.
Mhm.
And I also still prefer Hulk over Doctor Strange, very slightly. But I do prefer this movie, of course, Thor over any of the Iron Man movies. For me, it's Iron Man last, Iron Man 2 next, Thor, and of course Doctor Strange and the Hulk.
Your
about
ranking will never cease to amaze me.
It will get worse, trust me.
Yeah. Like they're getting more and more different as we go on, and it's great. This is up there with Doctor Strange for me. I still like Iron Man more, but I do like this more than Hulk. So I think it would probably go the Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Thor, Iron Man 2, and then this one. I don't know what else we watched, but I should have probably had it written down.
What about you, Solitary?
Mm,
What do you
I
put this
feel
movie?
like I enjoy the Iron Mans more than you do, but so it's hard for me because I do like the first Avengers one because it was the first Avengers one. Not particularly, I don't think, for the film itself. I just think because of, you know, everybody was there, so that was good. But I'm going to say out of the handful that you mentioned, probably this, then Iron Man, then Doctor Strange. Hulk's not even on there. It's not on my list. With the Doctor Strange one as well, because I'd already seen an animated one years ago. That's my favorite one of Doctor Strange. So I'd seen that, and then I'd gone to this, and Benedict Cumberbatch does a good job, and it is a good film. But I prefer the animated one.
Interesting.
Just for the first one, I don't know. I feel like the animated one did a better job of showing his like absolute desperation to want to be able to do is like to be a surgeon again. And obviously he didn't really get that, but it felt more desperate in the animation. Whereas they did do a good job in the film, just, you know. But yeah, I think Thor's probably number one, and then Iron Man. I don't mind 2 and 3 as well with Iron Man. They were right.
Of course, we'll get, to Captain America and then the Avengers and then Iron Man 3. But
yeah, so I think Captain America's our next one, right?
That is our next one.
That'll be a good discussion. I
have many things to say about my blue balls.
It's a good one, though. John doesn't sound like he's impressed.
Yeah,
I will have many things to say about this movie.
Okay.
Trust me.
So, John, anything in your notes that we didn't mention or that you would like to bring up?
Of course, I will. No, I will not make a joke about the entire race of people that are British. I will keep it for the Captain America movie. But what was the question again?
Is there anything that you would like to bring up from your notes that we didn't mention?
I enjoyed the movie we just talked about. I was trying to
Nice.
stretch it, in case I could think of something, but all I could think of is stupid stuff like about the sidekicks and like the lady with big lipstick and just stuff like that.
Did
I'll
it
keep it for the
make you
movies.
think of He-Man? Have you seen the He-Man film from the 80s?
Vital power, and that's what I remember.
So with I felt like I was watching He-Man, and it's weird because the first time, obviously, I watched Thor, I didn't think that, but he's from somewhere else. He comes to Earth. He's got to find the magical doohickey and all that stuff, and then he has his sidekicks. But I was like, this is just. I kept having He-Man flashbacks while I was watching it, and I enjoy that film. So it's not a bad comparison for me. For other people, it might be, but that's what I was getting for the whole thing.
Yeah, this is like a very common trope. This movie is definitely following the formula that works, that is tried and has worked over the years. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Sure, it might be He-Man, but I think it was still portrayed well. But I definitely.
It's a compliment coming from me because I do love that film. I just love that film ever since I was a kid. Dolph Lundgren did an amazing job as He-Man. But that's what I felt like I was watching, which was great for me.
Okay. See, this is why I wanted to invite Solitaire and her unique perspective on the matter, because she's the so knowledgeable about all the other things that we are not.
Yeah.
Because I'm old. I'm an old nerd that like superheroes.
And we needed to get some female representation.
Oh, wow.
Because
we got Latinos, we got Europeans.
Every episode so far, John has put a disclaimer about how he loves women, and then he says something about them.
Well, no, I didn't have to do it, because I invited one.
Yeah, you didn't have to. But Solitary, thank you for coming on the show and
being a woman
and talking. Being a woman, yeah. I'm sure you have some experience with that, and it's paid off.
Yeah, thank you for having me and my ovaries on the podcast. Thank you.
It was our pleasure.
Yeah, John, thank you for hanging out. Next will be Captain America, and that won't be interesting because it's going back in time a bit as far as like the storyline, and we'll be introduced to Steve Rogers and everything that is, and then after that is the Avengers.
Indeed, the big one,
the big ensemble. But yeah, thank you guys for hanging out, and we will see you all next episode.
Thank you. Bye-bye.